What is going on, everyone, and welcome to r/EntitledParents. Now, in today's first story, an entitled mum and her son go onto some private property and steal some berries. Now, little do they know, these berries are actually poisonous. Entitled mum and son eat poisonous berries despite my warning signs. Okay, I'm not sure if this is entitled per se or just plain stupidity, but this happened yesterday morning. So for some background, I live in Southern California, very close to the beach. Needless to say that I encounter a lot of locals and tourists. On the right side of my property, across the street, there are shops, a cafe, and a bus stop. Now on my property, I have a hollyberry bush, which are poisonous. Now they taste like cherries and have a cinnamon-like aftertaste, so a person that doesn't know about the plant would have no idea of this. The side effects of the berries are nausea, disorientation, diarrhea, vomiting, and severe stomach cramps. Due to my house being on the historic registry and nature protection laws, I can't just remove the bush because some of the birds pick at it and eat from it. I know that the berries and leaves aren't poisonous to some species of birds and other critters like certain squirrels and chipmunks. Anyway, because of this, I have two signs that say do not eat and danger. The fact that I have a sign with danger with a hazard skull and bones deters most people, except for this persistent mum and boy last morning. So, it's around 10:30 and I take my trash out. This mum, who looked about 40, had two kids with her, a teen girl around 14 to 16 maybe, and a little boy who looked 6 to 8 years old. The mum and the boy are the entitled/stupid ones here. The teen girl was actually nice. The entitled boy says, "Mum, look, berries! Wow, I didn't realise berries grew here. Let's get some." I ask her to read the signs that say don't eat them, but she just scoffs and says, it's not like you need all these berries. You should be nice and give them to my kids. Don't be greedy. "Mum, when are we gonna have the berries?" the entitled boy asked. "Right now. Teen girl, you want any?" No, Mum, I think that she got cut off by her mum." "Okay then." Because I'm older, I couldn't run fast enough to catch them. The mum and son broke a branch off the berry bush. They started running and scarfing down berries and went to the bus stop across the street, with the teen girl reluctantly following. I was yelling to get her attention for nearly 20 minutes, but after the mum and the boy started getting overly sweaty and acting weird, the teen came to talk to me. "Hey, sir, what's wrong? Those berries are poisonous. I tried to warn your mother and brother, but it's too late." The teen started to cry, thinking that they were going to die. I comforted her, saying that they'll live, but they're going to be just very, very sick. Soon, I went to my house to get seltzer tablets and water bottles to help. But by the time I'd come back, both the mum and son had finished all the berries and the boy threw up all over his shirts. The mum came back with obvious signs of throwing up herself and to yell at me when I pointed to the signs that said danger and do not eat and that this was not her fault. She flipped the bird and left. The teen just said, "Sorry." I gave her the seltzer tablets and she went into the cafe to get paper towels to clean up her brother. But by the time she came back, the mum had vomited too. They all got on the bus and I haven't seen them since. And there we go, quick nice fun story to start. I guess if you see a sign that says do not eat, I'd recommend not eating whatever the thing is. Crazy advice, I know, but that is me. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. Crazy Karen tried to steal my goats. Now guys, this isn't an update to the original goat story, unfortunately. I'm still waiting for information on that like 6 months later, but it is another amazing goat story. This happened in 2003 when I was 13. We lived on a farm, and my mother rescued animals and bought purebred dogs and horses to breed and to show. We had 50 plus animals at any given time, but none were in cages. We had the space for them to roam around the property. We had been doing this since I was 10, so I helped deliver my fair share of puppies and kittens. And then came the goats when I was 13. There were 50 white Angora goats in need of a new home after another farm closed down. We had the space, so we took them, and not long after that came breeding season. Some of the goats were too old to breed anymore, so they were separated from the other goats and bucks while everything went down. A few weeks later, we could see which were pregnant, so we started to make separate areas for them to settle into while they were pregnant, and for when they had their kids. We had 15 pregnant goats. A few of the does were first-time mums. Most of them took to it quite well when the kids were born, but 2 of them rejected their kids. Angora goats only have 1 kid at a time on average. We tried to put those 2 kids with another family, but they didn't want them. So we had 2 choices: put them down or hand raise them. I chose option B. There was a boy who I named Stitch and a girl who I named Lilo. I did the whole thing on my own, getting up every 5 hours to feed them and clean their pen. We kept them inside. After 3 weeks of me doing this, the goats became very attached to me, but mostly Lilo, who would follow me around the farm during the day, whereas Stitch would play with the other baby goats. After 10 weeks, I'd weaned them both off the bottle and they were ready to join the flock, which Stitch gladly did, but not Lilo. She got on better with the cats and dogs than she did with the other goats. She would follow me around everywhere and would start bleating, crying if I left the farm. So one day I took her for a walk. I had a dog harness her size, so I put it on her with a leash. I had no clue how she'd respond to this, as she'd never left the farm before, let alone had a harness on, but she took to it straight away. It was like she was so happy to be with me that she didn't notice the harness. Along the first walk down the driveway, one of my neighbours complimented me on my well-trained goats, lol. Lilo absolutely loved it, so I made it a daily thing. Every day when I got home from school, I'd take her for a walk around town, and within a week, I didn't worry about the harness or a lead. She would just trot along beside me with her tail wagging like mad. And then came Karen. We went down to the creek, with me sitting and watching Lilo play in the water. The creek was at the back of the tennis court that sat beside a sports field. There was a cricket match going on that day, but unless you walked off the field, you couldn't see the creek, so I was out of sight. Or so I thought. I heard someone walking up to me, so I turned to say hello. I didn't recognize her, so she must have been from out of town or a friend of someone from town. It was the Karen. Hi, nice day, isn't it? I was already uncomfortable. Yeah, it is. Do you live on a farm? Yeah, just up the road. Do you have dogs? I'm looking to get a puppy for my son. We don't have puppies right now, but we should have some in a few months' time. Can I have yours? She said, pointing to Lilo. That's a goat. From a distance, I guess she could be mistaken for a dog, but not really when you look. See, I'm not gonna lie, what goat looks like a dog? Come on, woman. Don't talk to me like that. I've seen you walking your dog around town. Now give me the dog. Excuse me? That is a goat. And no, you can't have her. We have other baby goats you can have instead if you really want one. Karen then looks and realizes it is actually a goat and not a dog, and says, I don't like your tone, young lady. What would your mother think if she knew you were talking to me like this? You can go and ask her yourself if you want, but it's your funeral. I say this pointing in the general direction to the farm, knowing what my mum's reaction would be to this woman if she was to try anything with her. How dare you? I'll teach you for disrespecting me. Karen proceeded to whistle and call out to my goats in the way you would a dog, expecting Lilo to come to her. When this didn't work, she walked over and attempted to pick her up. Here's the thing about goats, they're fast little buggers. If you think you're gonna catch one that doesn't want to be caught, you're in for a rude awakening. Lilo sprinted away from Karen and went in my direction. I picked her up and began to walk away, with Karen muttering profanities under her breath at me and her failed attempt at kidnapping my goats. I was worried she might follow me home, so I took a detour through another property that joins up to the creek, and then to our property at the back of the creek. Even if she was to follow me, it's easy to get lost when going this way if you haven't done it before. I never saw Karen again after that, but it didn't discourage me from walking my goats. She was smart and loyal and dang fast when she wanted to be. Most of the time, she would be walking me, which is part of the reason why I took her off the leash. So here's a message to all Karens out there. Don't steal goats! A sentence I never thought I'd type out. Well, as soon as this Karen thought your goat was a dog, I knew from that point onwards that this was going to be an interesting story to say the least. And yeah, I was right. I mean, how can you ever confuse a goat with a dog? Yes, they're an animal. Yes, they have 4 legs. But that's pretty much where the similarity ends, isn't it, guys? I mean, come on. Have you ever seen a goat that looks like a dog? If I can find a picture of a goat that looks like a dog, I'm going to insert it right now. Is there a picture on screen? I actually really hope there isn't, but if there is, then yeah, I've just proved myself wrong. Anyway, let's move on to our final story of today's video. Karen tried to exploit the death of my father. This story is a long one, so buckle in, you're in for a wild ride. This happened in 2009, but I need to give some backstory for context. At the end of 2007, when I was 17, I suffered a spinal cord injury and brain injury from my own mistake. I spent most of 2008 in hospital for rehabilitation, and my dad, my hero, was with me the whole time. He chose my life over the opposite wishes of my mother when I was in a coma. He fed me when I couldn't do it on my own. He cried cried with me when I couldn't understand why my legs wouldn't work anymore. He helped me through all the trials and tribulations of rehabilitation. He was there through thick and thin, and I owe him so much, even now, 11 years after his death. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for his love and support through my life. My mother is a neglectful, narcissistic and abusive person, by the way. My dad put his life on hold for me when I had my accident, which included his passion of flying. He was a skilled and experienced pilot, flying small planes and gliders for many years before purchasing his own ultralight plane in 2007, similar to a glider but without a roof. Around the middle of 2007, he began to build his own house in a large property just out of town. He worked in construction and knew how to build houses, and he had friends and family helping him finish building this house while I was in hospital in 2008. At the end of 2008, the house was finished and I moved there to live with my dad. I'd been living on my own and working full-time at a local supermarket before my accident, so going from 100% independence to needing full-time care was a hard adjustment for me to make, but dad was with me and helped me through it. I'm not sure I would have gotten through it without him. In retrospect, I never knew what I had until it was taken away, like dad's laugh or his uncanny ability of lighting up a room just by being there. 2009 was one of the hardest years of my life, having to adjust to a life I'd never known before, a life in a wheelchair. My dad still had to work, so he would hire a live-in support worker to stay with me while he went away for work. Because he worked in construction, most of his work was around the state, which meant he had to travel for work. There were 3 different support workers that were hired, but the one relevant to this story was Julie, who was recommended to us by someone in the family. Julie was the support worker that stayed for longer, but was the one that I didn't get along with. Our personalities didn't mesh well together, but I just went along with it, knowing that dad had to work. In the middle of 2009, Julie suggested that I submit my story in a magazine, a well-known lifestyle magazine in Australia that pays for real-life stories. I wanted to help my dad with money, so I submitted my story, and not long after submitting, it got selected. I went through the process of telling my story, which took me a few weeks to write, as I didn't have the finger dexterity and brain processing abilities that I have now. I submitted the finished story to the magazine and waited for their response. They had to edit it to fit their storytelling formats. It was to be put out in the Christmas edition at the end of that year. All I had to do was wait. At the start of December 2009, my sister was home for school holidays. She was 16 at the time, and Julie had gone home for her Christmas break. My dad and his brother, who lived a few hours away, had a work opportunity in the next state that would last 2 weeks. They both worked in construction. I wasn't able to be left on my own at the time, so my dad trusted my sister to keep an eye on me while they were gone. My dad took his ultra-light plane with him so he could fly it on his days off, and also take his brother flying, as he'd never been on a plane before. There is a domestic airport in the city they were travelling to for work. When they left for work, I never got that cliche moment like in movies with the feeling that something was going to go wrong. They just left and all was well, with dad calling us every night before bed to wish us a good night. On the 6th of December, he called us at around 7 PM to wish us a good night. He said that he was going to take his brother flying that night. Nothing out of the ordinary. We said goodnight and said we'd talk to him tomorrow. In retrospect, I wish I'd begged him not to go flying, but dwelling on what could have been isn't going to change a thing, which is something that's taken me many years to grasp. I spent too many years thinking of the what ifs. Then tomorrow came. At 9 AM, my uncle, who lived about 45 minutes away, stopped by. This was out of the ordinary, as he rarely stopped by out of the blue like that. And then he said the words that still resonate in my mind. Your dad and your uncle are dead. I wanted it to be a sick joke. This stuff only happens in movies and bad dreams. Not in real life. Not to us. Not to me. They had been flying the plane and it crashed, killing them instantly as the plane hit the ground. Not out of pilot error, simply just bad luck. But it was true. As the realization sunk in, my pain flooded to the surface. Memories of him came with the tears. Him tucking me in at night when I was a kid, comforting me when I had a bad dream, telling me it would be okay when I thought my life was over after my accident. But at that moment, I didn't think that anything would be alright again. In the week leading to the funeral, word spread about what happened, and we received many well wishes as people began to make plans to attend the funeral. A few days after their death, I received a call from the magazine. They had heard about what happened, not from the newspaper, as I'd never given them my dad's name, but from Julie. I was furious. I called her immediately to ask why she'd called and told them when it was not her place to do so. She told me that she wanted to be paid for her part of the story, when it wasn't her story to tell. The most interaction they'd had was the occasional conversation regarding work and the weekly paycheck he sent to her, so they were in no way close friends. I still intended for the story to be told, but I didn't want it to be twisted into their own narrative with the knowledge of his passing. He was my hero, and I wanted him to be perceived as such, and not have my story be twisted into a sob story about my dead dad. And I wasn't going to profit off of his death. He deserves much more than that. So I told the magazine that Julie was to have no part in the story and that it was to be written exactly as I'd originally planned. As much as they wanted to use his death to tell the story, they respected my wishes and told it as it was. Still to this day, I carry rage for what Julie tried to do. Nobody's misfortune and pain should be exploited like she tried to do. The title of the article was All for Dad. I'm in a much better place now that I have washed away the guilt and the what ifs. There is a hole in my life in which he should fill, but my pain is numbed by the fact that they didn't suffer. I miss my dad and think about him every day, but I'm thankful for the time we had together. Rest in peace, old fella. Wow, what a story. So just to summarize, Julie tried to benefit monetarily from your dad's death, trying to get herself involved in a story that she wasn't meant to be involved in. She has no place, it's nothing to do with her. It's between you, your dad, and your entire family, of which, of course, Julie is not a part. Yes, she may be your carer, but you said yourself you don't really get on with her, and to be honest, all she was trying to do there is just make money out of your misfortune. What a horrible thing to do. All I can say, OP, is may your dad and uncle rest in peace, and may Julie get some serious karma after this story, because I can't really believe what she tried to do there. What a horrible, horrible person. Thank God that you were able to, say to the magazine, I do not want her to have any part in this story whatsoever, or benefit financially at all. In fact, I don't want anyone to benefit financially from this story. I mean, come on, my uncle is dead and my dad is dead. Yes, I want to tell the story, but I want to tell it on my behalf, my story, not Julie's story, who's not even involved. I mean, come on. Anyway guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Entitled Parents. Bit of a deep one, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it and I hope you guys did too. If you want more right away, check out this video. It's quite similar to the last story I just read out, the first story in that one anyway. So yeah, if you want another kind of deep story, go and check that one out. Also, if you are new around here, make sure to hit this button over here. Subscribe to the channel, because why not, man? Turn notifications on and you get notified every day when I post a video, which is every day. Every day. Let's go. See you tomorrow.